F.E.A.R is a game that I had been meaning to play for a long time. I had heard good things about the games, but I had never had the chance to play them until now. And to be honest, the game is not what I expected. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. F.E.A.R is a rather good and unique game, a game that was good enough that the franchise spanned a trilogy. I wanted to play them in order, so I bought the first and second game. The whole F.E.A.R franchise was on special, and the first two games were a pretty good price, so I bought both of them, so that if I didn't like them, then I wouldn't waste my money on the third game. But after finishing F.E.A.R, this has to be one of the best games that I've ever played. Even though the game is old, it is still pretty good. Since I have never touched the F.E.A.R franchise, it was like playing a new game to me, which is an experience I enjoyed. The game is a story-based first-person shooter, and that is a genre that is almost non-existent now. F.E.A.R came out back in 2005, which was a really great year for shooting games. This would be the time that a lot of first-person and third-person shooters had made sequels to their first games, and it's really felt in F.E.A.R. When you play F.E.A.R, you can feel the influence from different games like Deus Ex Invisible War, the Quake franchise, the Doom franchise, Prey, and Star Wars Battlefront 1. All the influences of these games make up the whole experience in the game. I had a really good time with F.E.A.R. The game falls under the horror genre, but in the game it relies a lot on action, story, and horror. The game has good horror elements though. The story is fed to you in breadcrumbs, and it doesn't hold your hand either. The game is set up in a way that forces you to think and also relies on the element of fear that you can really feel. F.E.A.R is one of the first proper horror games that I've played. There was never a moment in this game of where I stopped feeling like I was being watched or that something was going to jump out and scare me. This is the one game where I hesitated to just run through levels, and the game would constantly take you out of the gameplay loop, with there being many flashbacks and jump scares that make you forget you are playing a video game. I am glad I never played this game as a kid, because I would have most certainly been scared. The story of F.E.A.R is short and sweet in a sense. F.E.A.R is not a very long game. I finished the game in under 10 hours, but it felt much longer than that, because the game also has difficulty spikes of where it will throw a lot of enemies at you, and the story is about super soldiers who are psychically connected like a hive mind, and they are clones. Yeah, the story is a little bit all over the place, but what I'm saying is the enemies are super soldiers who take a lot of damage to kill, and because of that, a lot of the enemies are bullet spongy, which makes the game take longer to finish, because you can actually die very often in this game. The only way to play this game is to slow down time. This is a bullet time game that relies very heavily on that aspect. The game also has a lean mechanic and was one of the first games to implement that. It gives you the ability to peek around corners without exposing too much of your body so that you don't get shot or alert enemies. I didn't really use it that much, I just shot whoever I saw. The game tries to implement stealth, but unfortunately the game doesn't have the mechanics for it. You can try to stealth kill enemies, which would mean you'd have to melee them, and if you get caught by the enemies, they will melee you if you get too close, and the melee damage they do takes a lot of health. The game also has a few list of issues. For one is the combat. Since the game is a first-person shooter, for most of the game you'll be using guns, and unfortunately, the game doesn't have an aim down sight mechanic. All it does is just zooms in closer to the gun, and because the guns in the game are so inaccurate, it really makes it hard to get headshots. The bullet spray of the guns are horrible, and the hitbox of the enemies are so inconsistent. Headshots barely make a difference with the enemies, and most of the time you will have to shoot enemies anywhere from 3 to 5 times in the head for them to die. I'm a pretty accurate shot, and I usually aim for headshots by default, but it took me out of the moment for a headshot to not be an insta-kill. But the game is about super soldiers, so I'm not going to complain too much about it. The game has a good amount of various enemy types. They really keep you on your toes. They teach you to not relax. The game was also back in that era of where you get introduced to your next enemy type as a boss, and then throughout the game you face the former bosses, and sometimes they really catch you off guard if you're not careful. The other problem is the level design. The game tries to do this thing of where it gives you the illusion that you can go down 2 different paths, but most of the time they lead you to the same place. I found it very annoying because one path gives you upgrades and the other path is the one that progresses the level, and I'd often get confused on which way to go, so then I'd have to check both paths and then I'd have to backtrack if I took the wrong path. I would have preferred the levels to be a bit more linear, but maybe that is just a nitpick. The guns in the game don't make the most sense. The guns range from modern to futuristic, and yet the game itself doesn't really best represent the future. Through most of the game it looks modern, but then you have the futuristic guns and grenades which look rather out of place in the game. This is the other influences of games I was talking about. There are different guns that have different designs, over some of them look like your standard gun, and then you get the ones that look like they were ripped right out from other games. When I say other games, I'm talking about the ones I mentioned earlier on. And the game also lacks ammo packs for the different guns. There were many times where I ran out of ammo and I had to swap out a gun I liked with a gun I didn't like because I couldn't find ammo. You get most of your ammo from the enemies you kill, which is something I don't mind, but games of this nature usually have ammo all over the place, specifically video games from this era, and I was really disappointed because of that. By not playing the game sooner, I did feel like I have missed out. Maybe this game was misunderstood back then, but I definitely made up for lost time. After playing F.E.A.R for the first time, I can say I found a new game that I like. The game hasn't aged too bad. The game is kind of easy on the eyes, with it not having any running issues. If I am being honest, the game played perfectly fine. No modern hardware issues or anything, just an honest game with a good experience. I don't usually play horror games, and for my first horror game owned, I would say they did a good job. For a first-person shooter, they really took it out of the restrictions that most first-person shooters have. Overall, I had a great time. I stepped outside my comfort zone a little bit to try something a bit new, and at least for this time, it was good. I don't have anything really bad to say about the game. The game knows its limits and restrictions, and it stays within a safe distance of them. It never does too much or too little. It gives you just the right amount of everything. Just when you think you figured the game out, you switch to a flashback that scares you, and some of the visuals are really good, especially for a game that is this old. It has aged really well, and I would recommend people to give it a try. The whole F.E.A.R franchise is still able to purchase on Steam, and when they're on sale, you can get the whole trilogy for a really good price. And with that, this is the Chilly Man signing off. Thank everyone for watching. Peace out.